Having designed 3 watches for Squale and acted as a sort of consigliere for other designs, obviously there is some bias in my admiration for them. But let's be honest, not as much bias as many of the fake enthusiast and industry plant YouTubers that are simply facades for their own online watch stores, or for that matter, sponsored content in the journalistically compromised watch publications. So, as always, I'm going to be just as critical in the negative section as I would for any other brand. I'm sure my friends at Squale will understand my duty to be honest and transparent as possible to my audience. Well, I do hope they understand. Now do let me know if I have been too harsh or too forgiving at the end of this video. And stay tuned for a rather controversial but painfully true conclusion. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, hi guys and welcome to the show. In a moment I'll do my wristwatch check, but before that I wanted to address, if you noticed in the intro, the Consubin Elite divers using the Palombari diver from last year that Squale released. Undoubtedly one of the most historically significant releases of 2023. It was certainly one of my favorites for last year. So how will Squale do for 2024? Well, it wouldn't be a full review without some historical context first. Squale, or should I say Squale, if you want to pronounce it correctly in French, sono italiano, che vuoi? It was my own horological gateway drug into Swiss independent brands. Since then, this heritage maker of exclusively dive watches has exploded in innovation and historic achievements, being the official choice of several of the most prestigious diving institutions of the world. In fact, it's perhaps the biggest success story seldom discussed by the watch group-controlled watch media. Ironically, due to Squale's own independence, a brand very much still run and owned by childhood friends of the founder and family members of its original distributors. This brand came to be as a casemaker first for several dozen other brands, then becoming a full watchmaker themselves later, hence the double branding on the dials, typically with the brand that hired them at the top, and then the Squale shark logo across the bottom as a mark of pride, as their high-quality casing had earned such a strong reputation for excellence. And let's not forget, the case of a watch is absolutely fundamental if a dive watch, and brace yourself for the terrible pun, sinks or swims in terms of success.
Allora, attenzione che questa è la seconda immersione. Bisogna usare molta prudenza. Regoliamo I nostri cronometri.
Squale was undeniably crucial in the creation of what would become dive watches as we know them today. As master watchmaker and diving pioneer Charles von Buren, its founder, was assisting a consortium of top Swiss watch brands with every big name imaginable at what would become a local diving school and former research centre on Lake Neuchâtel in Switzerland. He would experiment, test and help improve what would become standard features in all dive watches. This real-world field testing, or should I say lake testing, would result in watches far more robust, reliable and superior in performance than brands far bigger and better established could offer. In turn, many of them would actually turn to Squale to produce their cases, the likes of Zinn, Tag Heuer, Blancpain and Doxa, just to name a few. Simultaneously, Squale would become the choice of many of the world's top free divers and competing diving teams, as well as being supplied to the Folgore Parachute Brigade in the Italian Army, the diving units of the Italian Polizia di Stato, and more recently, engineers of the world-leading submarine manufacturer Dras Galeazzi. But most impressive of all, the Marina Militare's very own Consubin, the modern descendants of the world's very first ever elite combat divers and frogmen. I'm about halfway through my jog. To decrease the weight even more with the right rubber strap, this is the Waffle from Riscani Watch Club, it feels even better. It just positions it right. The Tropic strap, it comes a little bit too thin. This is just perfect. FMK or FKM, I can never remember. But yeah, it decreases the weight even more, so it feels like I'm wearing a G-Shock. I don't know why, but titanium watches, they tend to feel like something experimental, like maybe some kind of military prototype from from Area 51 if they made watches. Maybe I'm watching too much X-Files, I think so. And the size and the height, a lot of reviews have got the height completely wrong. It's actually 15 millimeters, so yeah, fantastic. So this is completely in titanium, including the bracelet, and it comes with an additional strap. We'll get into the bracelet in just a moment. Now you can see the anti-reflective coating. So in terms of the crystal, as we're on the subject, it's a domed, very thick 4mm sapphire. Now in terms of scale, it doesn't stray too far from my own current forged carbon. That's the T183. What is great about these cases is, despite the quite large diameter, they all wear fantastically even on the smaller wrists because of the lug design and the way it sits on the wrist. Some may criticize the extra height, but you got to remember this is a 1,200 meter bestia, a beast, this thing. And you can see the automatic helium escape valve. It's great for boasting rights, but also I mean, who's going to actually use this? If you want to get an idea just how staggeringly deep that is, just Google the Byford dolphin accident and you get to see the horrific results of working at such depths. Actually, come to think of it, if you don't have a strong stomach, perhaps best to skip that recommendation. But how it wears is, even with this height, pretty well because of that extra, you know, all the gaskets. Waterproofing required to go to this extreme depths. The genius behind this particular case design is still absolutely evident, very efficient in the ergonomic design. I mean, Von Buren really was a genius. The way the bezel overhangs ever so slightly, but not too much that it catches, just perfect for getting grip. The action is pretty good considering titanium made watches and bezels tend to have a little bit more difficulty in getting absolutely right. Something about the tolerances of such metals, but the alignment in the 120 click is pretty much dead on. The finishing is absolutely spot on. This is where the majority of the money goes. But what is so wonderful about this case is the way that the crown is tucked away at the 4 o'clock position. This curvature just glides the thumb perfectly to grip it. So when you do unscrew it, if I just give you a demonstration, and you see that I'm doing it with gloves on, so imagine even thicker, you know, gloves used in saturation diving, which ultimately this would be for. Great purchase there. And also when it is screwed in, it doesn't protrude too much. So it's one of the very few dive watches that is quite comfortable ambidextrously. Unlike my Panerai, you know how it juts out the luminor with the crown guard. In a military context, you can wear this, do press-ups, and it's not going to hurt the wrist. I wear my watches quite a little bit forward, but even so. Now, sticking with tradition once again, we have an off-the-shelf Sellita SW200. So you get everything you'd expect: hand winding, quick set, hacking, blah blah blah, the rest of it. Again, we'll return to that as well as the luminescence later on in the video. To celebrate 65 years, Squale decided to mark this auspicious occasion by making their very first completely titanium watch, utilizing their most iconic case design as now a permanent part of their lineup, and refreshingly not another limited edition. The appropriately named Master was first launched in 1959. It became the bedrock on which most of the brand's success was built upon. So superior was the case to everything else on the market at the time, even Blancpain hired Squale to produce them for their own 50 Fathoms collection. They had also achieved the distinction of being issued to the German Bundeswehr frogmen. While updated over the years in a whole manner of ways, it's always kept its indicative mix of helmet-like curves and angular flanking surfaces, designed specifically to grip, even with gloves on, for the most challenging of diving environments. That little extra high-polished beveling on the lugs is an unexpected nice bit of a refinement, and not as easy to achieve as it is in steel. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Tudor Pelagos, right? In my opinion, the gold standard, or should I say titanium standard, of luxury tooltastic divers from a Swiss brand under or around $5,000. But what's interesting is Squale have gone for grade 5 and not grade 2 titanium like in the Pelagos. What's the difference? Well, they're both hypoallergenic, they're both around half the weight of steel, but the grade 5 is twice as strong and also twice as scratch resistant as the titanium you see in the Pelagos, technically making the Squale, especially when you can take into consideration the water resistance, the toughest mechanical diver in its price range. The only thing lacking that the Tudor has is, of course, that in-house movement. Then again, the Squale is what, half the price? When I was first introduced to Squale, the vivid use of azzurro immediately evoked my childhood in Italy, and the 1521 still comes in either a choice of high polished or matte bead blasted. This was done to please those who wanted something a little bit more elegant, or alternatively, something more tool-tastic. Titanium certainly puts the watch firmly in the latter category. Along with the practicality of the decreased heft, the ceramic gunmetal bezel, the brushing of the framed markers and hands all carry on this utilitarian theme. There's no sunburst of bright coloration, and the only exception being is a subdued fire orange printed word Master, reminding the wearer who really did create ultra-deep divers first. Speaking of orange, the signature neon orange minute hand has also been sacrificed for the sake of stealthiness. One of many signature features, Von Buren was first to innovate, in order to help differentiate at quick glance underwater or in low visibility. And just like so many of his ideas, adopted ever since by so much of the industry. With Squale stealing away the highly coveted Consubin contract from the originally Italian rival Panerai, this has always led me to believe that part of the reason for them starting to use sandwich dials was a sort of under-the-chin swipe, or poetic middle finger up to their nemesis, a design trait more akin to the Radiomir and Luminor. So my biggest negative for me personally with this watch is the rather paradoxically named Old Radium Superluminova luminescence. The bezel and the hands are absolutely great, functionally speaking. You can see the conventional use of shapes and numeral differentiation and quickly indicates orientation. However, the framing of the individual markers deepens the distance between the top and the sandwich dial, thus resulting in them being less exposed in both to read and to let light in to charge them. Now, I've never seen this type of, I guess you could say, 3 types of layering to the dial. I've never seen it before, so it is quite unique, but I think just a standard sandwich dial would have been absolutely fine. Also, minor gripe, but I would have loved the date to be framed as well, just to kind of balance it out a little bit. Now, the movement, while perfectly respectable, I was getting about plus or minus 5 seconds of deviation out of this one. For this kind of money, we really should be seeing Cosc level, especially for, well, let's be honest about it, this is definitely a more premium model in their lineup. They've done it before with the 1521, so why not here? And sure, I get it, while we're on the subject of money, you know, crafting a watch 1,200 meters capable diver entirely out of grade 5 titanium like this is not a cheap undertaking. But in these days and times of overly entitled armchair watchmakers, how do you justify double the cost of this compared to 1521. Now I got to say, I'm not a fan of this butterfly clasp on a bracelet. It's also got pin links there. I'm not sure if it's even possible to do screwed links on a bracelet this small, and there's no diver extension. Now they do provide a lovely rubber strap, which if I was to buy this, I'd probably wear it on that. I do feel, however, the Milanese shark mesh, obviously shark, that gives you, I mean, it's just fortuitous really, isn't it? That would have worked much better because, you know, mesh straps are so fluid and it rarely works with the master case, in my opinion. It would have been a better choice. However, despite not having a diver extension, the links are very, very small. So when sized, you do get quite a good fit. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of the bracelet. Even though I'm really impressed with the end links, they have done it really well in the way it meets the case. And there is drill lug holes as well, so not the end of the world. The faux patina, why oh why, I think it's so played out right now. I would have preferred this with the white. I'll put a picture here so you can see. If only they had done the white like they did the Marina Militare Squale Master with that sandwich dial. That was just perfection. Crisp white makes more sense. This is supposed to be a new watch. It's not supposed to be vintage inspired, well, from what I understand. Now most of us mere mortals cannot pull off this level of sprezzatura. We're not cool like James Bond. We can't wear orologi di battaglia, as the Italians say, watches of battle with formal attire. That's why I'm wearing this jacket. It just doesn't go. Kind of like wearing a baseball cap in a fine dining restaurant. With this video, I wanted to answer 3 things. The pros and cons of this new for 2024 watch. Is Squale still, technically speaking, the best Swiss dive watch maker in its price range? And lastly, with all the historical context presented earlier, why are they still so underrated and not on the top of every list when it comes to this particular genre of watch in all the online publications? Well, the truth is, one of the very things that makes them so enticing to watch enthusiasts like me, military personnel, professional divers all over the world, and collectors in the know, like our good friend Sandro Frattini, is the very same thing that ironically is holding them back. They still remain a relatively small, independent, family-run brand. So just imagine for a moment if they had the marketing budget of one of the big juggernaut watch groups behind them, with enough fat cicciotto brown envelopes to grease the right palms and to get the recognition they deserve. With the constant gatekeeping by the same small elitist circles that really do control the industry and its media mouthpiece of manufactured hype, they simply don't care about you, me, or brands like this that don't pay to play. So now you begin to see why Squale remains so overlooked, despite achieving much more than brands 10 times their size. Are they still the best in their price range? Well, I think so. The standard 1521 in steel is unequivocally still the best 500-meter capable automatic Swiss diver under $1,000. I challenge anybody in the comments to come up with a better alternative in terms of heritage, spec, quality, and price. But what about this new watch, despite its shortcomings? Its real problem is that it's going to have to convince people to pay more than twice the typical asking price, and in these days and times, that's a tough one. Still pure class, still strepitoso as ever, but just a little bit more expensive. This very much is an antidote to all the overhyped, the oversaturation of the same old choices, a brand that's still very much underrated and under the radar. However, for me personally, it's made me appreciate my own forged carbon, this beautiful tactical watch, much more, because I think they got it spot on first time around with the first generation of this. They updated it last year, not feeling the update. Funny how things go. Whereas this has so much potential, but in a way, I guess it's a good thing that they did all these strange decisions with the bracelet and the faux patina and the dial and blah, 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 because the last thing I need is another Squale. But anyway, there we go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, especially if you want to see more free and truly independent content like this. I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Onwards and upwards. Ciao.